Inside the U.S. Capitol, Brett Kavanaugh, now formally a U.S. Supreme Court justice. What do you know about this private ceremony, Phil? Who was there? Who swore in the newest justice?
Yeah, private ceremony, small ceremony. John Roberts swore in the new justice. Anthony Kennedy was there as well. Obviously, the man he's replacing, a man he also clerked for. The people who were there included his wife, his parents, and his daughters. And I think with all of the kind of outrage and fury and bitterness of the course of the last couple of weeks, it's kind of a reminder that there's a family involved here, and that this man will now actually be seated as one of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Now that he's sworn in, he will be ready to take part in the Supreme Court's activities next week. And there's no question about it. This was done very quickly. The United States Senate voted to confirm Brett Kavanaugh just a couple of hours ago. He is now on the court, and in between all of the protest, all of the outcry, and frankly, if you're talking about where Republicans stand, all of the elation, there's a reminder that he is now a Supreme Court justice. He will now be ruling on the most important decisions that come before the court over the course of probably a generation to come. And as has been kind of the stakes that have been laid out from the very beginning of this nomination, the very beginning of this fight, he now very clearly tilts the Supreme Court towards the conservative side of things. It's been what Democrats have been railing against and trying to oppose. And the reason that, at least here on Capitol Hill, Republicans were so dead set on moving somebody who they say had all of the qualifications, had all of the background for this job. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, said over and over again he thought he was the most qualified nominee that has ever been picked to serve on the court. Well, now he's there. And I think the big question is, along with all of the questions about what happens in this institution, the U.S. Senate, the institution across the street, the Supreme Court, and frankly the country, but also from Brett Kavanaugh's perspective, what kind of justice he's going to be, what he'll bring to the court, what he'll do on the court, and all those questions are questions, frankly, Anna, that we just don't have answers to at this point.
There are so many questions. You're absolutely right, and a lot of concern tonight about what this means for the country. Phil Mattingly, thank you. Miguel Marquez, our thanks to you as well. We'll discuss more about this moment, what it means for the U.S. First, I want to take you back to Kansas and this picture where crowds are gathering, where they're expecting to hear in just moments from President Trump as he headlines a campaign rally in Topeka, Kansas. It's a safe bet he will bring up Kavanaugh's confirmation as he fires up his base there. Just 30 days now from the midterms, and just moments ago after landing in Topeka, the president said this about the Supreme Court's newest member.
He's an outstanding man, an outstanding person. What they put him and his family through, the Democrats, over the last few weeks is horrible. If you look at what he's had to endure, horrible, false statements, it doesn't get any worse. But the beautiful thing is he is now in. He's going to be there for a long time, and he's just an outstanding intellect, outstanding scholar.
CNN's Sarah Westwood's joining us now from the rally venue. And Sarah, Trump also spoke to reporters aboard Air Force One. What more did he say?
Well, Anna, Trump has been eager all day to tout this victory. He's been praising now Justice Kavanaugh and the Republicans who voted to confirm him earlier today. And he's been defending the controversial process that unfolded on the Senate Judiciary Committee and at the FBI in the nearly 2 weeks since that sexual assault allegation against Kavanaugh was first raised. Take a listen to what he told reporters aboard Air Force One.
When these allegations first surfaced, that you said there shouldn't even be a little doubt. Are you 100% certain that Ford named the wrong person? Or?
I'm 100%. I have no doubt. And the FBI has done an excellent job. They went through it, and they went through it 7 times. The FBI went through 7 investigations, and they did a very thorough job, excellent job.
Now, Trump has taken every opportunity to talk to reporters today as he was leaving the White House aboard Air Force One. When he was getting off the plane, he did a phone interview with the Washington Post, so he's clearly jumping to take credit for salvaging a nomination that at one point looked doomed. And perhaps we're going to see a very forceful victory lap from Trump once he takes the stage, because by any objective standard, Anna, this has been a pretty successful week for President Trump, not just with the confirmation of Kavanaugh, but also with the striking of new trade terms with Canada and Mexico, and with those eye-popping job numbers that came out earlier this week, and capping all that off with confirming a Supreme Court nominee who will tilt the ideological bend of the Supreme Court for years. So Trump is likely going to have a lot to say to his base here in a little over 30 minutes from now, Anna.
And also, Sarah, what is the president saying about the protests that we're seeing?
Well, President Trump fired off a tweet on his way here to Kansas Kansas about the size of the crowd at the Supreme Court, downplaying the energy and outpouring of opposition we've seen around the country to the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. He's compared the size of the crowd at the Supreme Court to the crowd that's gathered here for him today, and that just mirrors the rhetoric that we've seen from him as this process has wound down. He's also accused the protesters of being organized by Democratic groups, by George Soros, of being paid. There's no evidence of any of that, but Trump is clearly eager to discredit the kind of opposition and pain that we've seen from people who did not want to see Kavanaugh seated on the court. Anna.
Sarah Westwood, thank you. We will continue to check in with you, especially as we hear from the president in a matter of minutes. And joining us now, let's discuss first the president's comments and then also the Supreme Court state of play, so to speak. CNN Supreme Court reporter Ariane DeVogue is with us. Lynn Sweet, Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times, is here. And national political reporter for Bloomberg Politics, Sahil Kapoor. So, Sahil, the president, in his remarks on his way to the rally, as Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh is being named, being sworn in, saying he is 100% sure that Kavanaugh was not the person who assaulted Christine Blasey Ford. Remember, she said she was 100% sure it was Kavanaugh. I mean, Kavanaugh's confirmed now. Why even go there?
This is a very Trumpian way to handle this whole battle. He took an argument and a narrative, and he tried to flip it around into a counter-narrative. They say, worry about her and think about her and believe her. He say, well, what about him? In his view, he was being unfairly accused. They say, worry about your daughters being sexually assaulted and not being believed. He said, worry about your sons being falsely accused. He responded to fire with fire. It made a lot of Republicans nervous. And I think there's going to be a very serious backlash for Republicans in the polls as a result of this, especially in the House, where many, many suburban districts are going to hinge on college-educated women who are most turned off by President Trump and his party. So I think he's going to pay a price for it. But this Supreme Court seat was worth a lot to conservative elites. It's going to lock in 5-4 majorities on important issues, enormous issues like campaign finance, voting rights, gun rights, and it's going to tilt the court from 5-4 liberal majorities to potentially conservative majorities on issues like abortion and same-sex marriage and affirmative action and the death penalty. If you're going to burn capital on something, this is a very, you're getting a lot out of this, even if there is a backlash if you're a conservative.
It kind of seemed like he was taking a victory lap because he took his comments even further, Lynn. And it wasn't just about, yay, we have another conservative justice, but he continues to be on the attack. He continues to say things that ultimately are going to create outrage on the other side. And among women, I would imagine, when he goes on to say that women were outraged about what happened to Brett Kavanaugh and that he believed his comments criticizing Ford's story had a great impact.
Okay, so let's just quickly break this down. His words of mocking and denigrating her testimony could have an impact. That's why he does these things. It's very calculated. It doesn't mean what he says is true, and I hope that's an important distinction to everyone who's listening. He knows how to cultivate these wedge issues, and he somehow thinks that by denigrating Dr. Ford, he can build up Republicans and himself. That speaks more about him than about women who are survivors of sexual assault, who need to be and should be taken credibly, and Dr. Ford. And also, I think it is just nonsense that he knows for certain 100% that something didn't happen. What we know is what we know. Okay, so there is a credible allegation out there. The fact that the FBI didn't find more after a truncated further look at the inquiry means that things are inconclusive, not absolute.